I'll sit back down. Here we go. Okay. We did it. Good job. Good job, love. Alright, we looking good? I think so. Alright, chicken, you good? Let's go. What's up, Wizards? It's Dev. Mtg. We like it at Magic. Got some more Brothers War spoilers for you. This time, Tuesday spoilers. And there weren't as many, which is good, in my opinion, today, as there have been. We've been getting like 50, 60, 70 on some days. Spoilers per day. But today, we only have about 20 cards to cover. But don't let that make you think that there's not good cards. There's a ton of good stuff today. So let's go ahead and get to it. The cards we did get to see today were so jacked that there were only like 3 commons all day long. But even these were pretty good. So let's take a look at Ambush Paratrooper, along with Wasteful Harvest and Union of the Third Path. Paratrooper is 1 and a white for a 1/2 human soldier. It's got flash and flying, and you can pay 5 to have creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. You're probably supposed to use Power Stones to activate that ability. In Limited, I'm not sure how good this is. In Standard, although it does have flash, does have flying, few soldiers have flying, so maybe in the soldiers deck there's like some slight chance of this. You get deep enough in the game, you can actually use the activated ability. I'm ready to try this, but I'm pretty sure there's better options at 2-drop for soldier, but who knows? Maybe the soldier deck will be kind of a tempo deck or something. I don't know. I wouldn't put it out of the equation, but probably better 2-drop. So we'll move on to Wasteful Harvest. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Mill 5 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. So it's got to be a permanent. Can't be like instant sorcery. It's a little bit lame, but still kind of gives you Grizzly Salvage vibes. It costs more mana, but it's still an instant. And instant speed is kind of important depending on what kind of deck you're trying to build, but instant speed is kind of important on cards like this a lot of the time. So I kind of like this. I'm not sure it's going to crack much standard play or anything, but I do like a good self-mill card. And it looks like this draft environment calls for some stuff like that from time to time. So that's not too bad. Not whatever. So I kind of like it from that angle, but in standard probably won't see much play, but we will try to force it. Now, Union of the Third Path. This is the best looking of these to me, but it's still not super special. It's just 2 and a white for an instant. Draw a card, then gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Hey, so obviously you really want to think like, oh, I'm going to draw a card and gain 8 life. Yeah, probably not most of the time. Likely as not, but, you'll draw this off the top of your library. You draw a card, gain 1, at which point it's like a terrible Revitalize. It's like, to make this Revitalize, you have to have 2 other cards in your hand when you cast it. At which point you spent 50% more for Revitalize. And that's kind of terrible. Let's be honest with ourselves. But, when you start gaining 5, 6 or more life off of this, it becomes like a decent spell. Maybe a one of in like control decks that keep their hands stocked. But aside from that, I'm not too sure about it. But it's a cool little card. It reminds me of like Gerard's Wisdom, but it actually does something. It's like instant speed. I used to love Gerard's Wisdom when I was like 11 years old. Really, really awful Magic card. Just a terrible Magic card. But this is kind of like that. You don't gain as much life, but you draw a card, so it's like infinitely a million times better, and it costs less, and it's instant speed. So I would say that being better than Gerard's Wisdom is a pretty low bar, but this is much better than Gerard's Wisdom, and sometimes better than Revitalize. But I guess you cut that by saying that sometimes it's also just worse than Revitalize, which is not where you want to be. Now, we got twice as many uncommons as we got commons today. There's a whole 6 unks in the batch, so let's go ahead and look at these, because a lot of them are at least noteworthy, too. Let's check out Junkyard Genius to start here. This is 3 mana, 1 in Rakdos, black and red, for a 2/2 Human Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you get a Power Stone token. You can also pay 1, a black and a red, and sacrifice another creature or an artifact. Until end of turn, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain Menace and Haste, so that's kind of a lot of things for the card to be doing, but it's all at a relatively high price. I mean, I'm a little excited about a Rakdos 3-drop that sort of ramps you so long as you're using activated abilities or casting artifacts or whatever. But still, Rakdos 2/2 3-drop kind of that ramps you and has a nice little activated ability. Cool package on a card, but I think this is mostly for limited, but a pretty powerful uncommon there. I feel like the same is true of Evangel of Synthesis. This is 2 mana, just Dimir colors, a black and a blue for a 2/3 creature. It's a Phyrexian human cleric, and when it ETBs, you draw a card and then discard a card. As long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, Evangel of Synthesis gets +1/+0 and has Menace. So, kind of a 2 mana, 3/3 Menace sort of, it's not terrible in some ways. And the ETB trigger on this is really where it's at, We already have creatures in Standard at 2 mana that see just no standard play whatsoever, that loot when they enter the battlefield, that are easier to cast than this too. So I just don't think it does anything in Standard. But again, nice little limited uncommon. If you're in Dimir, it's definitely worth picking up because it's pretty high power. We also got Take Flight today, just a cool little card, but again, mostly limited playable. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an enchantment. It's an aura that enchants a creature. The creature gets +1/+0. It's got flying, and whenever this creature attacks, draw a card. So the creature doesn't even have to deal combat damage or anything. It's just whenever it swings, draw a card. So this is going to have some pretty decent effect on the game state as soon as it comes into play. However, the card is realistically very likely a trap. So don't necessarily fall for this one. But we'll move on to Gruesome Realization. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Choose one of these things. Either you draw 2 cards and you lose 2 life, or creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 till end of turn. They just couldn't do it. They couldn't make it like the best infect ever, in a way. They just couldn't do it, man. Instead, it's Sign in Blood with kind of a crappy sweeper attached to it. I don't necessarily love that. You got to pay 1 mana more for your Sign in Blood. Pretty versatile card that I'll probably play in Limited like a bunch. And if tokens take hold in Standard, like maybe it's a thing. Maybe there's like an aggro deck in Standard where like all the creatures are 1 toughness, and maybe this keeps them honest. But we already have stuff like this in Standard. Path of Peril and blah blah. There's like a bunch of cards in Standard that sort of already fit this role, but none of them draw cards on a second mode when you're up against control or something. So, one of the problems with cards like this, these like 3 mana black sweepers that did -something. Usually 2, but in this case 1. The problem with those is that sometimes they just sit in your hand and they're not very good in certain game states, right? But in this case, you got an alternate mode in case you can't actually use the card, draw into something better. So I think it's a cool card, but again, probably not a whole lot of Standard play, but this one might surprise me. So let's take ourselves a look at Zephyr Sentinel, our second soldier with flash of the day. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 human soldier with flash and flying. And when it ETBs, return up to 1 other target creature you control to its owner's hand. If it was a soldier, put a +1/+1 counter on Sentinel. So it's an up to. You don't have to return a thing to your hand, in which case it's just a 2 mana, 2/1 flash flying, 2 decent creature types, which it's not the absolute best thing in the world. Again, we have examples of exactly this stat line with these 2 keyword abilities in Standard, and they really don't see all of the play. It's basically spirits, but what if soldiers instead, which is, can't necessarily call it creative, but I've never seen soldiers do flash stuff all the time like this before, so it's kind of cool. But we'll move on to Great Desert Surveyor, the last uncommon we'll look at today, and it's probably not the best uncommon of the day, but I like it. This is 4 and a white for a 3/2 human artificer. And when it ETBs, you create a tapped Power Stone token for each other creature you control. Hey. I'm not sure that like Standard tokens decks actually want a thing like this. It just looks like it's 5 mana. You could be spending 5 mana better than that. You're already winning the game when you cast Jetmir, and that's 4 mana. It's just, they don't want this card. I could imagine some ridiculous deck here or there that we're going to play on stream and win like no games with. Tries to leverage this to just like ramp the biggest thing in Standard into play the turn after it comes out. But the problem is, this is 5 mana. So you better get at least like 3 or 4 Power Stone tokens off of it, or it does nothing. So you play it after a sweeper, it's bad off the top of your library. Sometimes it's going to be bad unless you're deadlocked and you have all the creatures in the world. So I'm just not sure that this is terrible or not. It's probably terrible. And in most situations, it's going to be win more. Like, I have 5 mana and 8 creatures on the board. So I probably win the game no matter like what I cast, or I'm probably in a pretty good situation. What is this really going to do? By the time I have 5 mana in a deck that plays creatures on curve to this card, do I even have a thing in my hand to cast with it? Do I? I don't know. Maybe I'm just using the Power Stones to do activated abilities. I have my reasons. I like this card. Just can I blink it? Can I just say that? Does that absolve me from liking this card? Oh, you can blink it. But there were also 6 rares today. Let's get into those, along with 3 mythics, which we'll see a little bit later. But I guess we got to start somewhere with the rares. So let's look at Persistent Behemoth first. I'm not sure this is the worst rare of the day, but Looks weird to me, but could be something. This is 5 mana for an artifact creature. It's a beast, and it's a 2/7. You may play land cards from your graveyard. Now, you can also unearth this for 2 green mana. That's just a super strange stat line. Like 2/7 for 5 mana? I guess you get 9 worth of stats. It's still kind of weird. Maybe in a self-mill deck, right, where you never actually pay 5 mana for this, unless it happens to be in your hand, and then I guess you can. But for the most part, you're willing to, or you're trying to mill this into your graveyard and then unearth it for not ramp, but land drops, I guess. Again, combined with effects that allow you to drop multiple lands in a turn, this probably becomes decent. But the fact that it doesn't do that is a little lame. But I mean, I guess in self-mill decks, it counts as a creature for various graveyard effects. And if you need a dude out of your graveyard, you need a land drop right now, then like, sure. So I wouldn't put this completely out of contention for standard play, but it's a weird one. I guess what I'm saying is you can never really count out Crucible of Worlds. I mean, pretty good card. So a Crucible of Worlds that you can like bring back for a turn after your opponent kills it, yeah, man, it's worth a shot. So let's move on to our next rare, which is Gitaxian Puppeteer. I guess Gixian. I get the words mixed up. It's Gixian Puppeteer. This is 3 and a black for a 4/3 Phyrexian Warlock. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Whenever Gixian Puppeteer dies, return another target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I like how this set, they just turned whenever you draw a second card into a mechanic. Like they just like took a dart and threw it at a bunch of magic cards and were like, whatever we hit, that's the new mechanic. And they hit Fairy Vandal, It's like, okay, that's the thing. And this actually is mostly just gravy, that first line of text. Cool thing about this is just like a 4 mana, 4 power thing that turns itself in when it dies. Like, sure, sounds okay, at least to me, So I don't hate the card. Again, I'm not sure that this sees too much standard play, but if there's some kind of like cheeky combo, or again, that's self-mill deck, you get to land this, and then if your opponent kills it, that's when you get Stick Fingers or Lurgoyf or something like that. It seems cute, but I'm just not sure that it's worth the slots. At least it's not Hill Giant stats. They gave it an extra point of power. It's kind of nice, but I'm still, again, not sure that even with this kind of level of value that the creature is too standard playable, considering its casting cost is pretty freaking high, Think of what else you can do for 4 mana. Shieldred is 4 mana. But Shieldred, who dies every game, everyone's always trying to kill poor Shieldred. No one's ever said that. Poor Shieldred. Everyone's always just got a target pointed right at her back. It dies every single game and then does nothing. This dies and does something, so it's better than, that's my take. It's better than Shieldred. Not really. Come on. Anyway, I think it's a cool card, which I've said about a lot of cards in the last couple of days. It's very cool, but without a specific application in standard, I'm not sure it's going to be too great. But up next, it's a reprint, y'all. Get ready for Fauna Shaman. She's back. Just 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Shaman. And you can pay a green and tap her and discard a creature card to search your library for a creature card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle that bad boy up. This is pretty nice. Again, I keep bringing up these like self-mill decks, but the green-black decks really want their Stick Fingers. They really want their Lurborg, or their Lurgoyf. It's hard to say, Urborg, Lurgoyf. You have to do weird stuff with your mouth. But anyway, those creatures, sometimes they even want like a Dreadhound or like some other one of, toolbox kind of answer to a situation or something like that. And this, Fauna Shaman has traditionally even helped decks like not only self-mill, but other kind of mid-range decks play a kind of toolboxy strategy where you play silver bullet one-ofs of specific creatures or other answers that Fauna Shaman can go get up. And, the thing about Fauna Shaman is that you're discarding creatures into your yard, and you really want that in like the self-mill decks and standard that really have a bunch of effects that check for creatures in the yard. So if you can't tell, I'm excited about Fauna Shaman. This isn't always the most powerful card in the world, so don't take my excitement to mean that this is going to rule standard or anything. This is a Timmy card that's always kind of been a Timmy card, but obviously this is an important reprint for Commander. I shouldn't have to even so. Commander players love this for good reason. That's a format where this card is actually super powerful. But in competitive Magic, which is much more, again, of a game of turns, like I've said a million times this season, I feel like, Fauna Shaman doesn't tend to actually be as good as you want it to be, but there's a couple of decks right now, whether it's mid-range, just piles of good cards, or specific synergy-driven piles, like, again, those self-mill decks, that could really take advantage of a Shaman. So I kind of like this. But a rare that I like better is Steel Seraph, our last rare of the day. This is 6 mana, but don't let that fool you. This is a 5/4 flyer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose Flying, Vigilance, or Lifelink. Target creature you control gains that ability until end of turn. Now, you can prototype this in for 3 mana. 1, 2 white, and then it's a 3/3. So most of the time, this is just going to be a 3 mana 3/3 flyer. That's going to grant an ability to something. And it can put an ability on itself for the turn, which is nice. And give itself lifelink or vigilance if that's what you want to do. And vigilance is nothing to sneeze at these days in like a Wandering Emperor format. Vigilance is actually kind of important. This is going to be super good as a 3-drop after a Giada, I assume. So this can give the Giada lifelink the same turn and have her swinging in. So just a sweet little card, you know. There's like not really supposed to be too many angels, I would assume, in this set, but, you know, they still found a way to work an angel in there for the angel tribal deck in standard, which already isn't too bad, but it just got way better. Also, just let me throw this out here a little bit. You'll pay 6 mana for this some of the times. As a matter of fact, with Giada, you'll effectively pay 5 mana for this. You know, 5 lands and a Giada. So, you know, it's not like the worst thing in the world if you just pay 6 for it, because some of the time, if you draw it off the top of your library in a late game, you might as well pay 6 and get a 5 power flyer. Just really, really flexible little card here. But let's move into the Mythics and decide what we want to talk about first here, I guess. We'll talk about Awaken the Woods first. This card is so sick, dude. This is 2 green mana and X for a sorcery. Create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. Okay, so like it just makes a bunch of Dryad Arbors is the reference here. Now, in case you don't know how Dryad Arbor works, I have seen some confusion. You cannot tap them the turn they come into play. That's why they don't bother putting them into play tap, is because they're creatures and they have summoning sickness, so you can't tap them. Okay, we're all caught up on that. But still, I mean, for 3 mana, this effectively ramps you by 1. Not great, but it's something, you know. For 4 mana, it ramps you by 2, and now we're talking for 5 mana, ramps you by 3. Not bad. Scales really, really well throughout the game, too. So I kind of like it. Your opponent can just, like, resolve a sweeper and take care of all of them, but there's no Meat Hook Massacre in Standard anymore. So I feel like this card is better than they planned for it to be when they assumed that Meat Hook would be in the format. But still, without Hook, I feel this card just got, like, way, way better. And your opponent might still have a sweeper for it, but then you kind of, I guess, how bad do you really feel? You know what I mean? They spent a card. You spent a card. It's all fair, you know, in a way. So I don't hate this. I don't know how much play it sees outside of certain formats. I imagine Commander players probably going to be all over this. But in Standard, I'm at least going to try to make it work because I have a feeling that the scalability on this is what's actually key. And I'm just talking about it like it's a ramp spell. Oh, you spend 4 on it, you get 2 ramp. You also get dudes. So, you know, you might not think it's a good idea to spend 7 mana making 4 forests, but you can attack for 4 with those forests, so it doesn't seem too bad to me. Also, I imagine if you devise a way to give all of your creatures haste, the card just becomes, like, bonkers. So I'm going to try it. We're all going to try it. It's a fun-looking card, but so is Platoon, and this is the actual translation of the card that I have. This is Platoon Dispensary, man. This is 5 mana for an artifact creature. This one's just a regular old construct. It's a 4/6. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. But here's the thing, guys. You can also pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 colorless artifact soldier creature token. You can also unearth this for 4 mana, 2 and double white. I think 5 mana might be a little much for this in constructed, but still kind of neat. I wonder if this is a little bit win more for the decks that want to play it. But again, this is like a self-contained creature factory and like extra card every single turn. So in some worlds, I could see a mid-range deck playing this on its top end, and it actually being kind of a problem. Like you have to deal with this where it draws an extra card every turn and just cranks out creatures. Eventually it cranks out 2 creatures. Even if you can, you know, destroy everything else on the board, eventually it's going to crank out two guys and just start, you know, fulfilling its own condition and drawing a card every turn. So it's also tough to kill with damage base removal, or even like, you know, swinging into it. It's tough to trade with it in combat. So it actually kind of looks like a bit of an issue, you know, especially too if Go for the Throat is one of the more played like black removal spells in the format. It doesn't kill this. So, you know, there are multiple issues that you might have actually getting rid of this thing once it's on the table. Cut Down doesn't kill it. Spend a lot of mana on a march to kill it. There's a lot, just saying. neat little card, and it does need multiple turns sitting on the battlefield, but it might draw you a card the turn it comes into play if your opponent's tapped out or doesn't have removal or whatever. It's pretty good off the top of your library when you're in like a top deck war. It's not bad at all. It's a great thing to draw then, actually, in grindy games. And we are in a relatively grindy standard where white is a fairly played color, whether it's in Esper or just even like mono white decks. So I kind of like this, and there is a mono-white sort of mid-range or control deck going around right now that might actually really like a piece like this at the top end. You have to deal with it or it's going to win the game. So I like this. I know a lot of people are just saying kind of meh to this card today, and even other people I've seen malign this kind of white card draw. People have been like, oh, we want real white card draw. I think this is real white card draw, y'all. So sick little card to me, and I think especially combined with things like Welcoming Vampire and other white card draw pieces that work well with it, it's kind of a ridiculous Magic card. So I'm a little bit more scared of this than I think other people are. And yes, I guess you could say I'm high on it. Dispensary. Anyway, Draconic Destiny is our last card of the day here. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying, haste, and fire breathing. You can just pump a single generic mana into it to have the creature get +1/+0 till end of turn. It's also just a dragon in addition to its other types. And when the enchanted creature dies, you return Destiny to its owner's hand. So it's an angelic Destiny, but it also kind of feels like a demonic embrace. You know, they print auras like this every now and again, and they're always pretty good. Like, this is kind of a great looking Magic card. To me, like, it makes pretty much any creature at all formidable, especially if you have mana to pump into it. By the way, this works really well with Power Stones, but just saying. But still, it works really well with having untapped lands as well. Just being able to turn even your 1/1 dude into a flyer that can do all the damage that you can have it do, depending on your resources. That's great. And then even if that thing dies, you still get it back. Like, that's kind of mitigates some of the problems with auras in the first place. You know, I mean, creature dies, you kind of get 2 for 1 because they cast 1 spell. They got rid of your aura and your creature. Well, this is one of those that mitigates that problem. Those tend to be, again, those tend to be very good. So I'm a big fan of this. There's a reason I waited till the last card of the day to talk about this one. I think that there are good mythics today. I especially do like the Dispensary. Clip that one. But still, this looks like for reals the actual best card of the day to me. I'm still not sure that it sees all the play in the world. In the end of the day, it's an aura. It's opportunity cost. You have to make room in your deck for a card like this, you know. And I'm not sure that even a deck like Mono Red Aggro wants to actually use a slot on this card when they could use those slots a little more optimally. But at the same time, I could see a good mid-range deck liking a piece like this. I could see Big Red, if it ever makes a comeback, liking a piece like this. And by the way, Big Red's getting pieces this set. Just saying. It always does. Never makes a comeback, but it is getting pieces. Got a 3-mana sweeper this set. But this looks great in a deck like that, where you're just playing like 1 or 2 copies of this. I doubt you ever see 4 copies of this. But you just play 1 or 2 copies of this. If you get it, it kind of makes pretty much every creature you cast for the rest of the game like really annoying and must deal with. It grants haste too, so if you have extra mana after you top deck a creature, you can throw this on. It's just, I really, really like this card, and I'm not sure it's destined to see all the play in the world, but it is pretty fire. I can't believe I made that joke. I'm so sorry, everybody. But whoop whoop, we got one more card today. I reloaded Mythic Spoiler before getting out of here, and there is an uncommon that has just been spoiled. I'll be the first one to get to it. Here's Gnawing Vermin. This is a black mana for a 1/1 rat, and when it enters the battlefield, target player mills 2 cards, and when it dies, target creature you don't control gets -1/-1 till end of turn. Sick little card, dude. I like this. Actually a good bit. I just read it for the first time 10 seconds ago, but I do like this. You know, again, self-mill. Is it just the day? Is it a self-mill kind of day? I mean, this is a great 1-drop for those decks. Just mill yourself, and then when it does that, it can take down like a 2 toughness creature. Sometimes a 2-drop, you know, just, I don't know. You don't want to attack into this all the time, and it gives those self-mill decks a little bit of time to get like on the board, get their game plan enacted, because, you know, it was really hard for those decks to not only get on board on turn 1, they had a couple of 1-drops, you know, what is it, Deathbloom Sprout, I think it's called. They had a couple of 1-drops, but you don't want to block with your Deathbloom Sprout. You want them to not remove it, and then just have like 4 or 5 turns, and then it gets big and it starts swinging or blocking or whatever. So you can't really block with it in the early game, and in the meantime, you get run over until eventually you're forced to block with your still 1/1 Deathbloom Sprout. This is a little bit different, right? This gets you right in the game, gives you 2 turns worth of Deathbloom Sproutage immediately into your yard when it enters the battlefield, and then you want it. You're incentivized to block with this. You put it in your yard, and it's yet another creature in your yard that counts towards all things that care about that. So cool. I like it. I'm going to be playing this all day. I know it just looks like a 1-mana 1/1. Who cares? But nice little ETB trigger to get you on, to get your game plan going on turn 1. Turn 2, Teachings of the Kirin, and now you got like 5 cards in your yard on 2. That's a dream come true for Golgari self-mill. So card's going to see play in my decks, if nothing else. But oh, rats, that's all the cards for today. Gotcha. But anyway, seriously, that is all the cards for today. Puns aside, not a whole lot today, but the stuff we did get was really worth talking about, especially the rares and mythics. A lot of good stuff. So let me know how you felt about all the takes, anything I left out, anything I got just plumb wrong. Which I sometimes do. I've had to issue a correction already this season. As a matter of fact, I think I was wrong about lay down arms. Somebody told me in the comment section. I was worried that it wouldn't be very good on curve because, you're not going to play a land every turn and people's creatures are going to get bigger every turn and that's going to be a problem. But it doesn't count power. It counts mana value. So it's even better than I thought it was. That's a good spell there. But in any case, I hope I didn't get anything wrong this time. Let me know. Still, I honestly think that we saw some really solid stuff today, and I'm getting more and more excited about the set every day. A pretty powerful looking set, if you ask me, but now I'm asking you, how do you feel about it? But aside from that, let me know how you felt about all the things, and what are your favorite cards of the day, all that stuff. But aside from that, I guess I'm more or less done. Just like the video on your way out before you hit the lights. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet for all the rest of the spoilers. Best of the rest content, top 10s, top 10 sleepers, decks, gameplay, all that stuff. You can check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/SBMTGDev. Towards the end of spoiler season here, which we're coming up on, I'm going to be doing the last bit of spoiler content on Twitch. So, make sure you're following if you want to catch all that live, or you can watch the VOD, whatever you want to do. But aside from that, I guess you can check me out on Patreon. It's the beginning of the month, which probably means that I need some Patreon money. So if you want to help me out and support the channel over there, you like what I do, you like my haircut. Most of you don't, but if you just enjoyed the content, you want to help make it better, go on over to Patreon, link in the description, or you can just type in patreon.com/SPMTG into your web browser, your address bar there. It'll go to my Patreon page. But I am now just babbling. So it's your turn to leave a book down there in the comment section. I love you all. And I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.